The segue is them hoarding materials, hoarding areas of the country, and not letting other people use them. This isn't the Pentagon. This is the federal government in general. It may include some of the Pentagon. But so this is not about can't account for. This is about they can't account for them, and they're just sitting empty. The federal government has more than 8,000 vacant properties, and this article proposes why aren't they being used to house the homeless or for a million other purposes. A 2016 law says unused federal property should be turned over to help the homeless. Well, I didn't know that. But a complex process and bureaucratic requirements are making that nearly impossible. Well, yeah, because the government has to want to actually do it.
You have to want to do the thing.
In Alameda, an island located in the San Francisco Bay, there's an old federal maritime training center built in 1942. It's been sitting vacant for years. For almost as long, residents there have been batting around ideas for what to do with it. Here's an idea. Let people live in it. They finally decided approving a measure to use the space to house older homeless. But that's obviously the exception. It's very rare that empty facilities are used for anything positive. And this just goes with the fact that we have 17 million empty houses across the United States. There is this, and something that none of these articles that might mention this would probably cover is this is where capitalism leads. It leads to all of these people buying houses, buying facilities, buying offices, corporations buying offices, and they're not using them, but they don't care because they hold the property value and they figure they can sell it and make more money later. And so they don't mind just holding empty facilities. And then you have the federal government also having 8,000 vacant properties. I feel like it's far more than that, but that's apparently the what they were able to find publicly. And people need we live in a post-scarcity world. It's not like there's not enough buildings or not enough houses.
Well, and also if you continue on the same article, so they say that the idea for this plan to house 100 seniors on Alameda is thanks to a 2016 federal law that says that properties the federal government doesn't believe it needs anymore should be turned over to state and local governments or nonprofits to be used to help the homeless. But because of the way the program is being run, the project in Alameda remains just a plan on paper. And so, the article also points out that while 8,000 are totally unused, another 898 are underutilized, perhaps because fewer workers are showing up or going there. So you could at least use part of those buildings for something. So basically, it sounds like what the issue is that they put this law into place to make it sound good and be like, oh yeah, we're going to help the homeless, but make it fucking impossible to do so. And you see this a lot. Like it's the same thing with food stamps or like a housing voucher, for instance. The shit that you have to be able to prove, or the very narrow niche that you have to fit into it in order to get a housing voucher. Right. And then the line for a housing voucher is like fucking 10 miles long, and there's billions of people in that fucking line. So it's like, hey, no, we have these things in place so that people can get help. Yeah, but if you make it impossible to get that help, then you don't have systems in place that make it possible to help people. And this seems like another one of those instances.
Well, and what sometimes the reason for that is you could have fairly progressive lawmakers, maybe not great, but in California, probably fairly progressive lawmakers are the ones that were able to get this through, saying if it's an empty facility, it should be used for homeless. But then the people actually in charge of doing that in the federal government or these other agencies, they're like, yeah, I don't know. There's no one in charge of doing that. The easier thing for everyone involved is just to leave it empty. I don't mean for those who would benefit, but I mean for the people that in charge of the facility, just to leave it empty. Then they don't have to deal with passing it off to someone else. Like it's just, I mean, it's a combination of idiocy and not caring.
Yeah. So the other point that he's making in this is that like there's a long string of people that have to say, no, I don't want it inside the government. For instance, The General Services Administration decides whether another agency needs the space.
Hunter Biden gets a pass.
Yeah.
If he has to turn it down.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development gets to take a look and decide whether it can be used to assist the homeless. If it determines that it can, another agency, the Department of Health and Human Services, takes applications from state and local governments or nonprofits to take the property over for free. Asterisks at for free, however, because the department requires nonprofits and governments have the money up front to redevelop and maintain the buildings. Well, guess what? Could I take a fucking naval base or whatever, the naval training center, and turn it into permanent housing for 100 houseless seniors? How many fucking nonprofits do you know that have that money? They're like, yeah, absolutely.
Sitting on cash, yeah.
No, that's fucking dumb. So basically you have a law that says, yeah, give it to the homeless, but if they don't have the money to maintain it, well, then that's not safe and we can't give it to them.
Also, Pete Buttigieg's dog sitter gets a first refusal on all properties. It's just the way our government works. I mean, that's nothing new, really. Yeah. But in a related story, kinda, in terms of the rich and the ruling elite, I count most of the ruling elite in the rich, even though not all of them are hugely rich, but most of them are. The segue is them hoarding materials, hoarding areas of the country, and not letting other people use them. And I found this article, and of course I've experienced this in my life, but not often do they write about it because big shocker, most larger outlets, and nowadays all of our outlets are owned by mega corporations. They want to speak to people who have a fair amount of money. They're not that interested in speaking to the poor. And so you don't often hear articles like this or see articles like this asking why people don't get to use the beach as much when most beaches should be free and open for all. With enough money, you can own a beach, or at least you can behave like you do. There are a lot of bad actors on this front. This is an article by Dwell, by the way. But two you've likely heard of are tech billionaires Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, who in 2016 built a wall around their Kauai estate they purchased at the dismay of locals, greatly diminishing access to a stretch of pristine coastline once easily enjoyed by the public. Of course, they're not the first to do this. Richard Nixon apparently did a similar thing in San Clemente, California, with his estate, and rich across the country have done some form of this. For many states, though, a coastline legally belongs to the public. You might not realize it. You try and get down to the beach in a lot of areas, and I have experienced this, and you basically can't find a way in. Yet, in most states, the beach belongs to the public. California passed a proposition to protect and preserve the coast. This is decades ago. That also made clear who the beach was for, granting everyone, presidents, tech moguls, stoners, and everyone else, maximum access, which shall be conspicuously posted. The same goes in Texas, where laws go back even further. In many places, everything below the mean high tide line belongs to all of us. So there are multiple ways that they block off beach access to people. It's not just building a wall. That might be the most obvious, but it's also like they'll just make it difficult to find your way down.
Right. They'll plant a bunch of shit.
Right. They'll plant things. Often they'll plant things with thorns in the way. They'll make it so there's no parking, so that even if you were to have easy access, you've got to walk miles to get down there.
Well, and most people don't know, right? So it's like, it's one of those situations where kind of like when I was doing mutual aid in DC during the pandemic, and you tell people, oh, you can get masks and stuff for free if you go here. And they're like, oh, really? Because it's just an information thing. And so most people, if they're driving along, and this happened all the time in LA, you'd be driving along PCH and you'd want to stop somewhere and go down to the beach. And there's a bunch of fucking shrubs and somebody's car is parked there who looks like they live there. You're not going to be like, but this is my beach too. Like, it just feels wrong. Because in this country, we're
that's what they're
taught
going for.
to
Feels wrong.
respect private property above all else, above human life. So they're counting, they're banking, if you will. They're banking on you feeling too uncomfortable to go that extra step to be like, you know what, fuck your shrubbery. I'm going to the beach. But most don't.
Yeah. And they just make it as uncomfortable as possible. And I remember this from when I was a kid and we used to visit Florida, and you'd go down to certain areas of the beach, and it would be walled off up where the private property is. So you think you can't, I mean, you basically can't get to the beach, and you start to think like, oh, that's because they own that stretch of beach. No, they don't. They don't own any stretch of beach,
Right.
but they own the area before the beach. And if they agree with their neighbors to wall all of that off with fences and driveways and things, then you can't actually get down to the thing that is public. And this just goes with the whole, like, this world is post scarcity. If we dealt with it appropriately, if we acted like rational adults, there's enough resources such as land and water and air and clothing and housing. There's enough in this world for everyone if we dealt with it appropriately, but we fucking don't. And it's because our economic system, which the idea initially of an economic system was to distribute things equally. I mean, not equally, but to distribute things well, efficiently. But our economic system is about money over all else. If you have money, you have power, you can extract resources, you can collect resources such as land, and you can block it off from anybody else.
Yeah. So what is the end call to action? Is it fuck your shrubbery, I'm going to the beach? Or is it just like, oh, well,
the end call to action? I
was wondering what the article
what
said.
the article's call to action.
Also yours, but
I wanted to give one, but
I want to hear yours.
Well, hold on. I had one more paragraph here. Let's see what this said.
Go ahead.
Coastal landowners in the U.S., including Zuckerberg and Chan, have a habit of redrawing lines in the sand, so to speak. In Malibu, access to Escondido Beach, have you ever been there?
Yes.
I have not. Had been blocked for decades by wealthy residents. The Los Angeles Times has reported used considerable resources to do so, meaning to block it. Before, in the 80s, how owners of homes flanking an easement that led to the beach had fudged property lines and obscured access by paving new driveways and planting vegetation. But earlier this month, in a huge victory for the Coastal Commission and the public at large, the easement is now being restored. So they're giving people
Suck it,
access,
rich motherfuckers,
back to the people.
Oh, that's a different article.
Oh, all right.
That's
what I was thinking with this, with a magazine such as this, there are no calls to action.
Okay, what's yours then?
Oh no, I was just going to say, well, you should definitely get creative with your ways of acting on this. One of them that was done that I always remember was for a brief, I think it was 2 seasons or something. Michael Moore had a TV show called like TV Nation or something. It was never going to last long because he would like insult advertisers and shit like that. But one of the things they did, and this also involved Janine Garofalo when she was a basically no-name comedian, was they decided to invade a beach that is considered private in Connecticut. Now, Connecticut might be one of the states where you legally can like tell people they can't be on your beach. I'm not sure for certain, but so the rich in Connecticut had walled off this area of beach, and Michael Moore and his people decided to invade the beach.
That's awesome.
So they went on
storming the beaches.
They stormed the beaches in like little watercraft with like flags and I think American flags. I don't know what kind of flags and they ran up on the beach, and then I think they either legitimately got arrested or like security, like mall cop type people came and kicked them out or something. But they made it look like a real like invasion.
That's so great.
But yeah, you should definitely get creative with it. But maybe you just find one of those beaches and you put a tent down there. Although I suppose then the problem is they do have laws on you can't live there,
right? And
so if you put a tent up, all of a sudden you're quote unquote living.
But I think the enjoyment of a beach does not need to be sleeping on it.
No, I wanted to figure out a way people. I wanted to figure out a way for people to hold the space. Hold the space.
Just have new people coming in. Oh, it's your shift now. Okay.
Yes, yes.
But-
and they actually wear the tent on their shoulders. So technically the tent is walking around. It doesn't.
I'm also reminded of the Black Panthers whose tactic was to carry around like a literal book that had the legislation and law,
Yeah.
so they could just show the cop and be like, actually, I'm allowed to fucking
That's a
carry
great
this
idea.
rifle around. And so maybe you could just do that and be like carrying, get it from the whatever place has like the property designated public property. Just take a photocopy, and if somebody like comes down and is like, this is my beach, be like, no, motherfucker, it's not. Here you go, and just like have it to show.
But here's the problem: is I think in most cases, unless again you put up a tent or something, in most cases, once you're on the beach, they're not going to send someone to arrest you because they know they don't own it.
Yeah,
so
but they might harass you, and a lot of these motherfuckers have like private security, so you could still.
Well, true. But I was gonna say,
don't trust rich people.
I was gonna say one of the things that I said earlier is they basically just make it very difficult to get down there. So one of the activism, I think a good call to action would be you get very official looking signs, and you print them out and you put them in in plastic coating so they'll last a while, and you just put those all over the place that say beach access with an arrow.
Yes, this way. Free awesome beach.
Free awesome beach this way. Exactly.
Nude beach.
Yeah, right. Nude beach. Why not? Why not throw in nude? Freedom is down here.